Hello, I'm Brad Scott, and this is my art. And today I'm going to talk a little bit and demonstrate a little bit about my inking process. Now, I want to re-emphasize again that this is not a tutorial. This is just the way I like to work. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. It's just a matter of you becoming familiar with how you like to work and developing your own workflow, which I'll admit took me a long time to develop, as well as I still don't like my workflow and I'm still tweaking it a little bit. So first, I just want to kind of go over what I plan to do. So I've been putting together a lot of Minotaur sketches for my new Lords of the Labyrinth project, where I'll have Minotaurs, role-playing game modules. I'll have posters and game mats. So I've been putting together a whole book of Minotaur sketches, and I usually don't ink them. Like this one is not inked. This is just pen and pencil. Excuse me. This is just a pencil sketch. I usually don't ink them right after I finish them because I may want to go back and tweak them, or they're unfinished or they're rough, and I still have all the construction lines in there and everything. But when I do ink them, I ink them a couple of different ways. So like this one, for example, I know that, and I've dog tagged a couple of sheets that I want to highlight. I know that I want to scan this and manipulate it more digitally because the pose I like, but I think I want to exaggerate the body a little bit more, try different types of armament before I solidify what I'm going to do for the final. So I just use a technical pen. I put in hard lines. I don't worry about different line weight, but when I scan it, it makes it much easier to segregate areas and drag and drop color into different spots. So this one was not done for beautification. It was done for workflow simplicity of moving this sketch to digital. And then after I do ink it, then I do erase the construction lines. Then I think I got another one here. This one, that is more of, let me go ahead and set that up. This one is more of a finished ink. So you'll see there's varying line weights, and it was done more to be a finished graphical representation. I'm still scanning this one to do a digital painting, but I don't know if I will or will not keep the line on this final one. But you'll see it's much different than the other one where I just used a straight technical pen. And so I've dog-eared a couple of sheets that I want to ink today. And so let's go ahead and get started. But first, and the first one I'm going to do is that beautiful Minotaur baby right there. And I am playing with, so I've got a new microphone, and I think the sound quality is going to be a whole lot better, but I'm still playing with lighting. I have not figured out the best way to light and not flash out the camera. So give me a second here. I'm sorry, I apologize. I think that maybe that's it. We'll try that and see how it goes. We'll try that. Oh, see, that might be it right there. Let's try that and see how it goes. I like that. I think you can see all the different lines, the lightweight lines, as well as some of the darker, heavy lines. So I'm going to go with that until I figure out a lighting situation. I'm new to the YouTube video construction, and I'm trying to make the videos better, so bear with me. As far as the tools I'll be using, and there's a bunch of them. So I'll start with the technical pens that I use for the most part. That's this set of pens right here. Microns and Copic Multiliners, and I use them in a bunch of different sizes. The reason I like these is because you get the same line weight for the most part, and it's nice and consistent. And I'm a little heavy-handed, so sometimes it's harder for me when I'm doing it real fast and I lose subconsciously what I'm working on. It's easier for me to use a technical pen, and they have different values on them. So I use a 3, a 2, I've got a 0.8, which I use as mainly outlining, a 0.05, which I primarily use for small details, and a 0.5, which I use for different things. Actually, the 0.5 is probably the one that I would use the most on interior, outside the boundaries. For the highlights, I have Signo Uni-Ball, and I have a Jelly Roll white pen. I'll be using those. I have a Copic marker to use for the large areas where I really want to black some. And I love the Copic Multiliner because it gives a nice deep, the Copic Multiliner as well as the Copic markers, because the markers specifically give a really deep, rich black. And I love that. And then the Faber Castell Pitt pen, another one that I really love. This one's a small brush, or a medium-sized nib, and it also gives a nice deep rich black, but it's not refillable. So that's why I love these, because they're refillable and I get to save a little cash. The primary tool I'll be using is a Pentel Brush Pen, and I love it because I can get different line weights in the same stroke by just applying pressure or relieving pressure. Now, I've already checked this pen, and I know that I'm getting low on ink on this one, and so I will probably wind up, oh crap, I think it's almost pretty much done now. You know what, I'm not even going to get into this is the great part about it. You just pull it out. Oh, actually, no, looks like there's still a lot of ink left in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back. But real quick, when it runs out, I'll just pull it out. I'll grab a new cartridge, stick it in, and I'll keep going. It looked like it was pretty much empty. I know it's going to run out of ink probably before I finish my first drawing, and then I'm going to start getting crappy lines, and then I'll have to stop and refill it, but that's fine. That's what it's for. Now, what I like to do is when I'm using this or any other pen, I always like to just, because they sit for a day or two, I just like to go ahead and make sure that everything's good to go before I stick it on my finished drawing. And I'll just put this card off to the side, and if I bring up another pen that maybe is questionable, I haven't used in a minute, I'll go ahead and throw some lines on a spare card, make sure it's good to go. Now this piece, I actually have the video of me sketching it, I think. I'm pretty sure that's up on my YouTube channel as well. And from the video, it might look like it's already inked, but it's not. That's just pencil. And I have erased some of the construction lines already in the interior to make sure that I don't ink over them. For the main figure here, I'm going to use the brush pen, and for a lot of the back, I'm going to use my technical pen, and I'm going to actually start with the back because I want to make sure that after I ink the primary, I don't want to go over it and take a chance on smearing it. So I'm going to use, there's actually 3 different levels of background here. I've got a brick wall here, then I've got a brick arch here, and then I've got a deeper background back here. So I'm going to use my technical pen, make sure I keep the line weight the way I want it, consistent, but they're all going to be a lighter line weight than what I'm using for my primary figure here. And I just want to give myself a little idea of what it's going to look like in the back, so that when I get to the primary figure, I can make sure I'm popping it out. And this is pretty much going to be a stone wall, and I'm keeping it relatively light line weight, and it is brick, so I'm not super worried about straight line quality because I want it to have that natural rough feel anyway. And for this, I'm using an 05. I don't know if it matters. Again, I'm not trying to do a tutorial. I'm just showing you what I do. If you learn some things from it, that's great. If you don't and you're just using it for entertainment purposes, that's cool too. I'll go ahead and put in some mortar lines. Mortar, you know, to kind of highlight the brick. I also like the microns because they dry pretty fast. But you always, as you get better and faster, you'll realize that you're working faster than they can dry, and then you'll have to worry about smearing. And that sucks. That really sucks when you smear. It sucks. I'm going to go ahead and do my baseline as well while I'm down here, because that'll be the same line weight. Okay. Then I'm going to go with one that's smaller than the 05. I'm going with an 02. And I'm going to do the brick arch back here and get a nice, hopefully visually smaller line weight. Make sure I have some mortar lines in there. And this doesn't have to be super tight because it is background noise. But it's funny, I've been lucky enough to have a few professional artists that have kind of started to watch me and provide constructive criticism and feedback and guidance, because it's my goal to always strive to be a better artist. And a few of them have come back and said, stop drawing your characters floating in space with no background. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not really. And it's funny because I want to be an environment artist for maybe games or movies at some point. And backgrounds is a lot of what I'll be doing. And yet when I do characters, I typically draw them floating in space with no background whatsoever. So, you know, they were like, stop doing that. Nobody's just out hanging out in space, you know, just waiting to be plopped into a background. Plus, it's harder to add depth or anything when you do that. And so I was like, you know what, you're right. I need to get better at that. And so that's what I've been striving to do, is just add some semblance of a background. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but it grounds the character so that they're not just floating out in space and then people are wondering, well, where's the character? And why do they have that expression on their face? And what the heck is going on, basically? Tell the story with your art. So I've been trying to pay a little bit more attention to that, be more cognizant of just drawing people floating out in space. Now the cracks in the, not the cracks, but the mortar lines in the ground here, I'm going to save those for later. But I knew this part here, to do it, I would have to reach over the character. And once I start using my brush pen, that's where I take a chance on actually smearing the ink. So what I try to do is, I try to work, since I'm right-handed, I try to work from the upper left down to the lower right. I can't do that specifically, but it helps prevent me from smearing. And then as I go left to right, if I come over here and I'm working on something, then maybe I'll shoot over here, give that time to dry, and then I'll come back here, and then maybe I'll come down here before I come back up here, because I want to make sure it dries. And the bigger ink blot that I put on, I know it's going to take longer to dry. For example, the nostril here, and I'm just going to go ahead and give you an example of that right now. I know I want that to be blacked out, so I'll go ahead and do that now, which I would normally start with the nostril, but I'm just here showing that make a point. And I'll black that in with my brush pen. And now that's a heavy black, and that's going to take a few minutes to dry. And if I were to run across it right now, I would smear it all over my drawing. Now it helps that I can use one of the whiteout pens to correct any of the smears, and digitally I can erase it as well. But this is one of the pieces that I want to be a beautiful original. So remember the piece that I showed you where I used just a technical pen because I know I was going to manipulate it a lot digitally? This was one of the ones where this is the drawing that I want. There's no deviation from this that I want. I love the way it came out. I love the figure, the shape, everything about it. I'll use the digital coloring to highlight some areas and make different things pop. But when I finish with this black and white ink drawing, it will be an original drawing that's for sale, whereas the other one won't be. It's really just to give me guidance going to the digital format. So I know that, and if I can put this up a little bit, can you see? I don't know if you can tell that it's still wet. You know, I've been talking for about a minute and it's still wet because that's just a lot of ink. So I don't want to smear. But trying to work down this way, that'll be my goal here. And I like the brush pen because, again, I can vary the weight while I'm working. And it gives a beautiful, beautiful flow to your drawing. So while I'm on the outside, I can go heavier and then come in lighter as it trails off on the inside. Love the brush pen. Now it took a while to get used to using it because I am heavy-handed, and when I first started using it, it was really hard to control the strokes, and I would get frustrated and I'd be like, and I would just pull out my technical pens and do that. But then I just started practicing using it and got better with it, was able to control it a little bit more, and now I'm a little bit more confident in the strokes that I make with it. So for example, this jawline here, I can start off small and give it a nice little trail off. And I love being able to do that all with a single stroke. Now this is still, even though I erased most of my construction lines, I still don't want to ink everything on the paper. I'm using the lines to kind of tell the story of what I want, but as I ink, I can see it start to come to life, And for you all on the video, I don't know if you can tell it as much, but here in person, I can easily distinguish between the pencil and the ink. And as that ink pops out, I start making decisions on, oh, nope, I'm not going to ink that part. I am going to ink that part. And I've already made a decision that for this one, the light is coming straight down. So I know what parts are going to be heavily lined and which parts are going to be more lightly lined. Because that's a big question, especially when you're using the brush pen, on where you want those heavy darks to be. Now, some of these places I really try to get a nice deep black in there, but I don't always do them initially because I still have to go back through here and erase the wow, you can see my shadow as I scratch my neck there. You can see the I know I have to still go back and erase, and I don't want to mess up. Sometimes I'll have to go back over the deep black portions because if I erase too heavy, it'll pick up some of those deep blacks. But I usually try to erase like a day or two later too. I try not to erase right after I ink because I don't want to mess up those lines that I have. And for the other thing that I've done already is I've already decided on where the focal point is going to be. So I know the parts that I want to be really nice, detailed, beautiful line work, and the parts where I'm like, I can probably cheat it a little bit. And for this drawing, of course, this area toward the torso to the horn is my focal point. And the rest of this can kind of blend out. And most of this area is going to be blacked out or grayed out in the background to kind of make the figure pop. But I do want to have some type of light source in the back here, where it might be a door way down the hallway, or not a candle, but a torch or something. I haven't decided yet, so I've kind of left that open in the air just to remind me that somewhere back here I want a light source, because I'm going to have the main light coming down, but then this little light source back here can maybe provide a little rim lighting or a little mood lighting, I don't know, but just to give myself a multiple light source. And I'm already loving the way this is coming to life. Now, here, the other thing I like about the brush pen is sometimes you really want some of those really nice, long, continuous strokes. And this is one of those where I want to go from the chin all the way down up under the chest. I want that to be one nice, contiguous line, nice and smooth. But I have to be careful because I have to start up here, and this part right here, oh, there we go. This part right here could smudge, and I don't want that to happen. So since I know I'm going to have to start up there a little bit, I'll come down here just a little bit and maybe do something with the belt buckle just to give that a little bit more time to dry. And this is one of those details that really didn't know how the belt buckle was going to look. And actually, I still don't, to be honest. But it's not a major portion of the drawing, so I'm not worried about it too much. I have usually a scratch card here because for the parts that I know I have to run off of the page. I don't like to try to stop at the end of the page. I think you can tell when you try to stop at the end of the page. So I just go ahead and I'll take my line and I'll run it right off. And I think that gives me a nice line toward the end, instead of me trying to go and break right at the end. Alright, I think that's dried enough up there, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go for it. And look at that. I already messed up. Alright. Came out okay. Messed it up a little bit because I picked up my elbow. And also on those nice long lines right there, I try not to go from the wrist. I try to go from the shoulder and the elbow. Now the rest of this is going to be pretty easy because I've already done the focal point. Now I can just relax and do the rest of the inking here, because the rest of it is not focal point. And I don't try to finish the total inking until I go back and erase the pencil lines, because as I get further along down the ink, the pencils become distracting at that point. So I like to get enough of it in where I'm confident erasing the pencils at that point. And have a beautiful ink drawing, and then I can go back and provide some details. And I don't know about you, but I'm really loving it so far. I am really, really loving it. And you should. You should love your work. You don't want to do stuff and then be like, I hate what I just did. Now, there is times for every artist, I think, where we're just not happy with what we did. Or we think a piece is never finished. Or there's always something more you can do. Now, the one thing I've learned is, although I'm not a pro, I've taken commissions, I do conventions, and, I put myself out there. And one of the things that I will say is, you're done when the deadlines due. When someone's waiting on something, and you're the one who has it, yeah, you quickly determine, oh yeah, this is done, and you turn it in. But for the most part, I think that oftentimes we always feel there's something else I can do. There's a little bit more that I can do. And so we're oftentimes not happy until we're done. And then even then, what's done? Now normally I'm not just sitting here in the quiet inking. I'm watching a movie, I'm listening to music, but because of copyright issues, I can't do that in the background. And feel free to turn down the volume and turn on something else. Turn on some music, Watch this with a friend while you're having a conversation. That's fine. Doesn't matter. I do that for a lot of the videos that I watch, especially time-lapse videos, which I'm not sure if I'm going to do a lot of time-lapse videos. For me in particular, a lot of times when I watch time-lapse videos, I'm like, man, I would like to see the version that's real time, so I can kind of gauge some things. And I think I want to do more real-time videos than time-lapse. What do you all think? Leave a comment. Let me know which do you prefer. Just would you prefer this as a time-lapse, or do you like seeing the process? Now, because this is real-time, I also am talking the whole time, because I don't want you to just be sitting there listening to nothing. I'm like, wow, that would suck, just a silent video of inking. So I try to provide a little commentary into what I'm doing, so that, you know, maybe that will help. And like here, I just inked this, and I know if I try to go over it, I'm going to smear it. But I want to do some work over here. So because I'm outside of the focal point, and I'm just trying to get a little shade in there, I'll just go ahead and extend the pen out a little bit over what I'm working with, because all I want to do is just put a little something there, you know, to kind of indicate the bottom of the abdominis there. That's all. So I'm not going to stress about that too much. And then I can always flip it around and put a little something in there like that. Okay. And there's a couple other things I want over there, but I think I'll do those at the end. I want to definitely show the heavy muscularity. So for me with the Minotaurs, I'm like, the upper body is really, really important to me. It is, if you look at a bull, period, just a bull, the butt of a bull, as opposed to the front shoulders and head of a bull, it's like a battering ram. And although the hind legs are powerful, it's really that upper torso area that's driving, you know, the driving force into smashing whatever it runs into. So I really wanted to keep this as that powerful shape right there. And I got to be honest, this drawing here was one of my favorites so far. It is, in my opinion, my humble, I'm the one that did it opinion, I think the art on this one is pretty fantastic, to be honest. And I love the way it came out. Now, you might feel different. You may be like, Brad, it's kind of crappy, man. And that's cool. Art is very subjective. There's no one, oh, this is good, this is bad. So I'm okay. And I understand that a lot of people may not like what I do or my style. And it took me a long time to learn that that doesn't matter, because that person is telling the truth. When people say they don't like it or they don't think it's good, that's the truth. Because art is very subjective. And you can't get upset because someone's taste dictates what they like. That is perfectly acceptable behavior. And sometimes it is hurtful when someone says they don't like it, but that's okay. They don't like it. It's perfectly all right for someone not to like what you did, what you spent your time and hard work on. Now, there are times when, especially when you're working for someone else, where they're like, that's not what I wanted. So do it again, or this is the last time I'm going to hire you, or whatever the case may be. Especially if you're working on a property that is kind of well known. So example, you get picked up on a game, video game, or a movie, and they go, that's not the type of art we're looking for, no thank you. That's okay. Then there is a right and wrong, because they have a vision of what they want. And if what you're doing doesn't fit into that vision, then yeah, it's probably wrong, I guess. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that your art is bad. And wrong for a job is different than what you did was bad. And that is the piece that I think a lot of people need to learn the difference of. Is what I did may be wrong for the job, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad art. And especially as you develop your own little style, then you find people who either like your style, but that's hard because your style is going to also change and evolve over time. So even someone who may like it today, they may not like it later. Now, is that crazy or what? They go, oh, wow, I don't like the way you've kind of evolved. I like what you used to do. And I've seen that happen before too. And I've had it happen with me personally, as well as some of the artists I like and follow. I'm like, ooh, I like the way you used to do it. Great example, though, of how evolving can be beneficial. One of the artists that I really love, comic book artist Labyrinth. You look at some of the early stuff he did and what he's doing now, I am completely in love with the way he evolved. Oh my God. I love the way he does his ink washes now. I think they're fantastic. And yeah, love it. So that's all I'm going to do for the brush pen for this figure. And from here, I would go toward I would go toward adding in small details and highlighting different things differently. But because I want a clean drawing to work off of and finish, I'm going to let the ink dry on this, and then I use a kneaded eraser, and then I kind of go over. So like this part over here is dry, and then I can just come up here, pick up those lines, and clean that up a little bit. Easy peasy. And I don't try to get rid of them completely, because then I'll wind up messing up the ink, to be honest. And I can barely see them. And if I were to sell this, which I don't know that I would, it'd be okay for me to have the client see some of the original pencil background really lightly sketched in there. Kind of let you know that, oh, this is the original. But I'm going to let this dry. I think that came out really great. And think that looks fantastic. I think it's going to look even more beautiful when I clean it up. So let's pull out another one and see what we can do with that one.